recorded, and then I'll do my intro bit again. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Securing Microsoft 365. So it's Mark Lawton here from Risc IT Solutions. So I'll be doing the first half of the session. So I'm pleased to be joined by both Michael Gould and Adam Cronin from Redstor. I'll let the guys introduce themselves as a handover sort of halfway through. So you're getting 3 for the price of 1 today rather than 2. So as I say, I'll be running the first half of the session, and the focus for the first half will be around the Microsoft portfolio and obviously securing Microsoft 365. And then Michael and Adam will talk a little bit about what Redstor do and how their offering can enhance the security and the disaster recovery of what you're doing with Office 365. So a little bit about us for those of you, got a mixed audience, some of our existing customers, some new customers. Just time people in the lobby. So a little bit about Risc first, just a couple of minutes on who we are. So we are cloud services specialists. So been in business for, well, this is our 21st year actually, so 20 plus years, and mainly focused around security, productivity and agility. So very much a strong Microsoft partner with gold competencies, as you see there. We look after about 25,000 end users in the Microsoft environment, and we also work with about 250 small local IT businesses around the UK that provide that sort of hands-on support to the customer base, which is about 1,000 customers across the UK primarily. Key partners, I've mentioned Microsoft already. I'll obviously talk about them quite a bit, so I won't go into too much detail. Also partner with a couple of key organisations. A company that was called Via is now part of WaveNet. They provide the traditional telephony, contact centre, voice enhancements to what we do with Office 365 and Teams in particular. And then, of course, Redstor that we have today. And we've been working with Redstor for most of those 20 years, to be honest. So that's certainly our longest partnership. And again, I won't go into too much detail and steal Michael and Adam's thunder around what Redstor do. So that's very briefly about us. So in terms of why we're here talking about this today, and it gives me an excuse to use this great slide that I stole from Microsoft, which looks really back at how IT was structured traditionally, where you had all of your people's identities, the devices, the applications, and the data pretty much sitting in a central location, whether that's your sort of on-premise data center, whether that's hosted by a partner, but ring-fenced by, in technical terms, a firewall. So that was the traditional approach to IT, and now it looks a little bit more like this. And obviously with the pandemic and lockdown, this has only been exacerbated. So I'm sure, like us, for most of you, you've got some people in the office, you've got a lot of people still working from home, and I think that was a big transition for lots of organizations, where you suddenly had to send people home with a laptop and Teams or Zoom or some other technology to help them keep in touch. But how do you, as an organization, manage that data, manage those people, manage those devices when they could be anywhere in the world? So that's the problem, if you like, and as I say, it's only been sort of exacerbated by the pandemic, with people working from lots of different locations. Now, Microsoft have some answers, and that's what I'm going to focus on for the first half of the session, in terms of what can you do, assuming that you're all either Office 365 users currently, or you're about to be. What tools do Microsoft offer to help you to manage that and keep your documents, your data, your people, your devices secure? So even though we've been in lockdown for the best part of 16 months now, obviously the threats haven't gone away, and if anything, they've probably got sophisticated and taken advantage of a couple of things. So COVID-19 being the obvious one that hackers have kind of jumped on, using that as a threat with people, but also taking advantage of the fact that, as I say, people are working remotely. They're more vulnerable than when everybody's in the office, because emails can come in, texts can come in, phishing attacks can come in through multiple different ways. So you can see these are fairly recent articles around some of the cyber attacks. So what can you do as an organization to minimize the threat and the impact of this? And there are some straightforward ways and some more sophisticated ways. So this is our Microsoft Wheel of Fortune, if you like. So all of these components are sort of Microsoft parts, and then obviously we've got the Redstor Cloud backup and the Teams link voice in there as well. So I'm just going to flip that on its head slightly, just to bring the security control stuff to the top. So, there are a number of areas, as you'd expect with Microsoft. There are lots of different ways of deploying security and lots of different options. And I'm not going to go into detail too much around the licensing side of things, but I will touch on some of the elements that are inclusive. So if you've got Office 365 out of the box, what can you do out of the box without having to pay any more money? I'll talk a little bit about some of the add-ons that you can do that are fairly straightforward, and then maybe touch on some of the more sophisticated, more complex, and therefore more costly security platforms you can put in place. But things like threat analytics, Azure Active Directory, Cloud App Security, endpoint management, otherwise known as Azure as Intune, and then Microsoft Defender and Azure Information Protection, as you see there, are the key elements in the wheel of Microsoft security and control. What we try to do in these sessions is try and condense it down into an hour slot. So we try and cover pretty much 80% of the stuff that will be useful in about 20% of the time. And this little screenshot here just kind of emphasizes the problem here. So this morning I went into the Microsoft documentation site and pulled off a PDF of the Microsoft 365 compliance documentation. And there you go, 2,493 pages. So there's a hell of a lot of information for those of you in IT to take on board when you're looking at the options with Microsoft. So again, what we try to do is condense this down and into bite-sized chunks and just really focus on those areas that will make the biggest impact and the biggest difference to you and your organization. Microsoft have a product called Microsoft 365 Business. It's now called Business Premium, and again, this is one way of you, if you're an organization of less than 300 people, of getting the majority of these solutions in one package. So I will touch on Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and the demo that I'll do when I've run through these slides is based on using Microsoft 365 Business Premium as the licensing type. Obviously, those of you out there will have lots of different Office 365 licensing types, and that's a whole session in its own right. So again, can't cover every combination, but certainly Microsoft Business Premium will give you the bulk of what you need to do all the things I'm going to talk about today. So that's the sort of intro. And if we look at how Microsoft approach their security, then they approach it in effectively 4 key areas. I'll just pull those up now. So I'm going to spend most of the time talking about identity and access management. The reason being that is the number one area where A, you can make a big difference, and B, where hackers are likely to try and target to get into your organization. So by stealing somebody's identity or guessing somebody's identity, guessing somebody's password, there are a number of ways, obviously, that hackers can get in through that way. So that's where I'll probably spend most of the time. Threat protection is around securing your organization and protecting your users from phishing attacks, from dodgy attachments, things like that could come in via email or through some other method. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you use Teams now. So Teams is another attack vector potentially for people to get attachments into your organization, either as guest users or through some other method. So threat protection is an important part as well. Information protection is all around making sure that your data doesn't leak out of your organization if it's sensitive or confidential, to make sure people don't disclose information that they shouldn't. So things like credit card details, so data loss prevention, if you've come across that, DLP is a big area of that. So that's around the whole information protection area. And then finally, what we call security management. That's getting visibility of how secure you are as an organization, and more importantly, steps you can take to improve that visibility. So for example, I'll talk about something called Secure Score, which you may or may not have come across, but again, that's a tool that Microsoft make easily available for organizations to look at through Office 365, and again can make quite a big impact on your security posture very easily. And then as an add-on, we're going to talk about Redstor. So all of this is great, and it's really important to make sure that protect your organization, you protect your users, you protect your data. then what do you do if something goes wrong? So what's the kind of last line of defense? And that's where Redstor are going to talk about their cloud backup and disaster recovery solution. So I'll put that on the end of there. So I'm going, for my bit, going to focus on Microsoft. So firstly, identity and access management, and that covers 3 areas: secure authentication, conditional access, and identity protection. And again, I'll spend most of the time talking about secure authentication. And as part of that, I'm going to spend a lot of time going on about multi-factor authentication or 2-factor authentication, whichever way you want to term it. It is having that second level of authentication for a user. I mean, 16 months into the lockdown now, my assumption would have been that most of you already have this in place for your users. Lots of organizations don't. Still come across organizations that don't even have 2-factor authentication for their global admin users, which are the users that have full access and full rights to do whatever they like to your Office 365 environment. So, you know, that's important. And when we look at Secure Score and some of the recommendations that makes to you as an organization, then you'll clearly see that multi-factor authentication, both for admins at the top level and then ordinary users at the next level down, is the most important thing you can do if you haven't already got it switched on. For those of you that are fairly new to Office 365, you'll find that Microsoft have imposed multi-factor authentication, particularly for the admin users, and there are very easy ways of switching it on. It doesn't have to be particularly complex, but obviously it has a bit of an impact on users. You know, they have to, they have another step that they need to go through to log in. But again, there are things that you can do to mitigate the user impact. User training, user awareness is always important. Conditional access, which I'll talk about in a second, is a way for you to be more granular about where people are asked for this second level of authentication. And these are just the various ways of doing that. So Microsoft Authenticator, if you've used it already, is the app that sits on your phone, whether that's an iPhone or Android, and allows you to approve or not. I don't know if you can see that. That's the Microsoft Authenticator app on my phone. Obviously got lots of identities. Windows Hello, if you're using Windows and a modern device, is that sort of facial recognition or fingerprint recognition as the second point. And then you've got things like FIDO security keys. So if you work in an environment where maybe a phone's not allowed for whatever reason, or it's a factory environment where it's not suitable to have a phone, then these hardened security keys are another way of doing this. So, you know, without wishing to labour the point there, as it says, MFI will present 99.9% of identity attacks, and that is the number one way that hackers will try and get into your organization. I'm sure you've seen recently, I think it was Facebook lost a lot of people's details, and although your personal password might be different to your work password, a lot of people use the same or very similar passwords for personal and work, and that is again the number one danger. Switch on MFA, it takes a lot of that pain away. As you see there, and again, I'll go through a little bit of this in the demo, but this is just some screenshots of what that looks like if you've not seen the Authenticator app working before. So I'll log into Risc. It pops up with the Risc logo on the top, as you can see there. So that's another way of personalizing your identity within your organization, is to put your logo on, put a background on that people recognize so they know they're not being phished. So that changes the Risc logo there, enter my password, depending on where I'm logging in from, and also what application I'm trying to access. It may or may not pop up for another level of authentication, and that's popping up with the Authenticator app, which pops up on my phone to say approve or deny there. So fairly straightforward to set up and straightforward to use. And then you've always got this little one here that says sign in another way. So if for any reason you can't get access to the app, it will send you a text and SMS as a backup. But the Authenticator app is the best way of deploying that. And I think, and again, apologies if you're already down the road with MFA, you've already had it deployed for a while. Some organizations don't, and some organizations don't understand that actually it's included within Office 365, so you don't have to pay extra to get it. Obviously, if you want particular features, and conditional access is one that I'll talk about briefly. There are some additional options to get that, but the basic multi-factor authentication, whether you're just using Azure AD and some other applications, or whether you're using Office 365, is free at its basic level. But it needs configuring, and that is obviously one of the issues, and it also has an impact on the end users. People don't like having to do another step to log in, but particularly when people are working remotely, that's a price I think for most of us we have to pay. Microsoft have introduced something called security defaults, so just to make it easier for you as an organization or us as your IT partner to switch on, there's effectively a single switch. You can say, yes, enable security defaults, and that will switch it on for everybody in your organization in one hit. So that's a bit of a blunt instrument, but it does get to the end result. So it will switch on multi-factor authentication, also block some of the older types of authentication, like IMAP and POP3, which again are a big attack vector for hackers. If you want to be a little bit more granular, then this Azure Active Directory P1 will give you, and this is actually also included in the Microsoft 365 Business Premium I mentioned before. That includes this as well. Gives you something called conditional access, and I'll come on to that. I've got a slide that covers conditional access just to show you what you can actually do over and above the out of the box offering. So there you go. So conditional access will bring some intelligence around where's the user logging in from, what device are they using, is it jailbroken if it's an Android phone, for example, is it enrolled if you've got endpoint management, or Intune as it's known as. So you can do quite a lot of granular checking here, and we use this a lot for example, looking at the IP address. So is somebody logging in from the office? Fine. Is somebody logging in from outside the UK? Not so fine generally, or some countries are a no. So you can be that granular about the location by IP address, the location by country. So that's exactly what it does. So it'll look at a combination of these sort of 4 areas really, and then make an assessment about how risky that login is. And then you can say, well, if it's a risky login, then we'll require MFA, or let's say it's the chief exec, then we might block access because clearly somebody's trying to imitate them, log in. So this does give you a lot more power in terms of making it easy for users, because if they come to the office, they don't need to use it, because the assumption is that they've got into the office, so they're a valid user. Or you can switch it on just to say, if they are in the UK, fine. If they're outside the UK, then always validate them through MFA. So the third one I talked about, so that's sort of conditional access. And then the third one is around identity protection, and just to give you a view of, this is actually our environment, so this is up to date. So you'll see we track, and again, a lot of these reports are available through the admin center through Azure. We can track things like successful logins. So you'll see there, this is a typical profile of our organization. So these are successful sign-ins over the last, I think it's 6 months. So you'll see, tells you how many apps, how many users, and how many sign-ins, and where they are in the world. Obviously, most of them are around the UK, a few in Europe, a few in Spain, a few in the US. That's fairly normal. If you actually look at the ones that are failed, you can see there's lots of countries there that we don't have people in. People won't be logging in from. So clearly, these are people trying to find a way into our organization. So it's important that you have visibility of this, and as well as having visibility, have a plan to mitigate it. Obviously, most of these have been blocked purely because they're outside the UK. We've actually got MFA turned on for everybody. So those, unless they found some way of getting hold of a second device that's enrolled, then they won't get access. But it just shows you how many attempts and where they're coming from. That are people just trying to sort of hack into our Office 365 environment. So again, that's an important one. So that's identity protection. Threat protection, secondly, again, this is something that's fairly straightforward to add on, and I'll show you briefly what this looks like in the demo side. So if you look at the bottom 3 there, so anti-spam settings, I'm sure you know about DKIM and anti-malware are standard within Office 365. So you can make some configuration changes on there. So for instance, on the anti-malware side, you can set a filter to say block certain attachments in Exchange. So .exe being the obvious one. So you can actually do some of these. When you add in something called advanced threat protection, or actually it's called Defender for Office 365 now, then it actually lights up these other 3 options here, which I'll just kind of circle there. So it gives you much more control. And again, if you haven't got this, you may have a third party sort of anti-spam, anti-phishing tool, whether that's Mimecast or Symantec or something like that. So, but that doesn't mean you can't switch this on as well. It's relatively low cost, really easy to switch on, and I'll show you how easy it is to switch on in a second. Again, these are included as part of Microsoft 365 Business, or you can buy it as a standalone bolt-on per user. And it gives you these other options, particularly safe attachments and safe links, which again, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And I will show you this little bit in the demo here. So this is basically how easy it is to switch it on. And it will actually apply these safe links. So it will in real time scan any links in an email, any links in a document, any links in a team conversation. As you can see in the tick box there on the bottom, it actually applies that to SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams for files that are stored, and will flag up any issues there. So safe attachments is really around email. So as I say, it will scan in real time any attachments that you've been sent or somebody in your organization's been sent. And as you can see there, what it's doing is it's delivering the email, but also scanning the attachments at the same time. So once that attachment's scanned and it's clean, it'll obviously make it available. If not, it will take that out and quarantine it. And then safe links is similar, but obviously looks at the links either in an email or a document or a chat conversation. And again, we'll check that in real time against a database of obviously phishing sites. Again, it just gives you that extra level of protection for your users if you don't already have that. Very straightforward. And how it works in Teams chats now. So obviously Teams is relatively new compared to email. So it wasn't actually available in Teams 12 months ago, like lots of things within Teams. It's caught up with the rest of Office 365 now. So I've just popped a well-known, recognized file here called iCar, which has got some text in it that shouldn't be there. So I've got a guest in my team here that's uploaded an attachment. So you'll see there, although it's uploaded, Teams has blocked it there with the X in to say this is a dodgy file. So you are not allowed to access. If you do try and open it, it'll basically tell you that that file has been blocked to protect you. So again, whether it's an email coming in, whether it's a chat conversation in Teams, or whether it's somebody that's a guest in one of your teams that's uploading a file, then that will be protected through advanced threat protection, or I should say Defender for Office 365 now, as Microsoft like to rename these. And then obviously, if you've got Windows security on your PC as well, or another third-party antivirus, that will pick it up as well if you try and save it to your PC. So the third one, information protection. This is all around, as I mentioned, sort of knowing what data you have and classifying sensitivity and how important it is to your organization in terms of financial information that you don't want to leave the organization. It's about protecting it. So whether that's encrypting it, whether that's giving it sensitivity labels, and then prevent data loss. So that's, I mentioned DLP, data loss prevention. So that's around, okay, how do you make sure that doesn't escape, or how do you make sure somebody doesn't give out a credit card details on a Teams chat or on an email? So that can be protected. And then really reporting on that. So, how long do you need to keep your data? So this is a big debate at the moment post GDPR. So how long do we need to keep the emails? How long do we need to keep data for? Do we get rid of it after 3 years? Do we keep it forever? Obviously, each organization is different, but have a think about how long you need to keep that data for, and retain it and/or get rid of it, depending on what your retention policy is. But those retention policies and those DLP policies again apply across the board, whether that's data stored in SharePoint, in OneDrive, in Teams. So there, yeah. So know your data, protect your data, prevent the data loss using things like DLP, and then look at your retention policies. How long do you want to keep that data for? So just as an example of how that works in Teams. So again, Teams, if you don't know, pretty much uses the rest of Office 365 to store its data, whether that's a chat or whether that's a file. So again, that makes it easy for you as an organization to apply those policies across the board. So as I say, whether it's a chat conversation, which is effectively stored in Exchange, although you can't access it as an email, but it's stored in that Exchange infrastructure. Likewise, your documents, if you attach a document or upload a document to Teams, that's stored in the SharePoint environment. And then all of these sort of policies then are applied across the board to those. And I found a very, very short video here. It's about 12 seconds, so very short, just to show you how that manifests itself in Teams. So that's, there we go. We'll edit them out. So yeah, what we're here is a chat conversation where somebody's giving their credit card information to either an internal or external user. Obviously blocks that, tells you it's blocked, pops up with a tip to say, okay, what can I do about that? And again, these are now very, very easy to deploy, and I'll show you how easy. There's a lot of templates now around GDPR and around UK personally identifiable information, for instance, that do make this a lot easier to deploy now. Let's move on to that. And the final one I just wanted to talk about was Secure Score. So I mentioned that again. That's something that's standard within Office 365, something you may or may not have seen before. If you're an IT admin, I'm sure you'll have seen Secure Score. And there's no sort of absolute correct mark on this. It's really about identifying areas that you can and should improve. And it also compares you to other organizations and also compares where you are now to where you were over the last 30 days. So obviously the idea is to just improve on your Secure Score. So you'll see there, it highlights improvement actions, and you can see there, number one there, require MFA for all users. So that is weighted. Obviously the ones that are most important get the highest weight, and then obviously improve your score the most, and it will also give you a comparison against similar sized organizations and industry averages as well. And again, that's just a great way of highlighting and deploying a particular security features. So conscious of time, it's 10:30 now. I'll just quickly do 5 minutes just to show you what some of this looks like in action. Just shut that down for a second. So this is, as I mentioned, this is a Microsoft 365 Business Premium Office 365 environment that's been spun up this week. So this is one of the Microsoft demo ones. So it's a brand new environment, so it hasn't been changed at all. So one thing I wanted to just touch on here, this is something new that Microsoft have built into the Defender Admin Center, so the Microsoft Security Center, called Configuration Analyzer. And again, for those of you that are IT admins, you've been able to do this before through quite a convoluted process where you have to run a script and it identifies your current settings and then makes recommendations. Actually, what this will do now in Configuration Analyzer will highlight settings that you can improve on, particularly around anti-malware and antivirus. Catches up with itself. There we go. So really useful. Again, what it will do is compare your current settings, so anti-spam, for example, with best practice or Microsoft best practice. So, for example, if it detects spam, by default it moves it to the individual's junk mail. Their recommendation actually is to change that to quarantine that message rather than put it into junk. So little things like that, and you literally do one click, say adopt. So do you want to confirm that? Yes, and then it will actually push that change through to your admin center. So again, what they're trying to do is give you an overview of your current environment and also compare that to best practice. Now, the strange thing is, this is obviously a brand new Office 365 tenant, but we haven't changed anything on it. So even Microsoft standard setup, they've got the recommendations of changes that you should make to it. So does beg the question, why don't they put these changes in the first place? But I think it depends about you as an organization, how you want to deploy these. So as I mentioned before, you've got these three settings here: anti-spam, anti-phishing, anti-malware. So at the moment we haven't got ATP or Defender for 365 switched on here, so it's only giving you a view of 3 options. If I just quickly go back to the admin center now, and again, for those IT admins, you'll have seen this before. You've got these little cards that give you an overview of different areas. Oh, sorry, my Teams is popping up there. So set up advanced threat protection, and as you saw on the screenshot on the slide, literally pops up, gives you the standard settings. Do you want to create those policies? And you can just literally say, yes, create policy. It might ask me to log in again, just as an admin, depending on whether it's timed out or not. So that will go away and switch on advanced threat protection. Using the standard settings, again, you can dive into more detail and look at those. Manage the safe links policy, manage the safe attachments policy. I won't go into that in detail. What I will do now is go through to this configuration analyzer here and refresh that, and all being well, it should have produced some additional settings for me to look at. Just give it a second to catch up. There you go. So now you've also got safe attachments and safe links, as I mentioned there. So again, some of the settings on safe links you can change. Again, generally, you can adopt these, what Microsoft will call best practice. So, for instance, do you want to apply those safe links policies to internal email messages as well as external? Well, yes, apply them to all of them, because it's not going to do any harm, I don't think, other than it might delay an email by a few minutes or a few seconds. Safe attachments in particular, there are some ways you can change this. Again, do you want more documents when you're opening the documents in an Office client like Word or Excel? Do you want it to validate that document's safe as well? Well, yes, ideally. So it does give you, again, the option to just adopt these. Give it a click, and it will change that default then. Once the recommendation's done, obviously then that recommendation will go away. So that's something called Configuration Analyzer, which is great for making sure that you've got the best practice switched on there. The other thing I wanted to just quickly touch on was data loss prevention. So I mentioned DLP, again, a lot easier now to deploy than it used to be, mainly because they've got templates here. So if you look at our data loss prevention policies, there shouldn't be any. There we go. So there's nothing on there. But obviously I can create a policy. So let's just pick a template just very quickly. Which area, which category? So let's go for privacy. We'll skip GDPR as we're not in the EU anymore, although GDPR does apply to us, but I'll pick a UK one. So let's go for UK Data Protection Act. So that will look for, as it says there, those 3 pieces of data that people might be sharing. So passport number, NI number, and SWIFT code. What do you want to call it? Yeah, call it that. Do you want to apply it everywhere and to everybody? Well, yes, please. So you can review and customize it. Literally click through. Then there's some granularity around how do you want to capture any incident. So if somebody does try and send, for example, national insurance number out, do you want an email to come to you as the IT admin, so you can then go back and maybe put some training in place for people, so you can actually customize that. Skip on that one, and then do you want to just turn it on or test it out first? So it allows you to test it, so it will just flag up rather than actually do anything. So there we go. Submit that, and then that's on then. So that's sort of how easy it is to set up a DLP policy. Obviously, you can configure that and customize it for your own needs. That's obviously just gone away. Just while it's doing that, I'll come back to the second. Secure Score. Obviously, I just gave you the screenshot, which was of a different tenant. This is a baseline, brand new Office 365 tenant. You'll see there, pretty poor score, I would say, 17%. As you can see here, improvement actions. If you click View All, it'll give you a list of all of the recommended things that you can do as an organization. So as you'll see there, top 2, MFA for admin roles will give you another 17%, and MFA for everyone else will give you another 15. So you can see, without banging the drum for MFA, that's the number 1 and number 2 thing you can do there. So if it's something that you want to do or plan in the future, you can click in there. You can actually set yourself a task to do it. It'll tell you what the user impact is. It'll tell you what it's protecting against. You can plan it. Need to switch on MFA. There. Tells we've already got the licensing we need. Let me just save that and close it. So it will tell you that it's scheduled, ready for, there you go, planned. So it tells you the status there is planned rather than to address. So again, secure score, really, really easy way of highlighting areas that you should be addressing. Data loss prevention. Okay, let's finish that bit now. So we have a policy in place now, and obviously you can have as many of these policies in place as you wish. So slightly conscious of time, it's taken me to 10:40. I think I'll probably leave it there for the Office 365 security side. Let me just stop sharing my screen and say hello to Michael and Adam again. Guys, are you still with me?
Yeah, I am. Hi, Mark.
Brilliant. Okay. So that's the Microsoft bit. So I'm going to kind of, rather than letting you get away with just introducing yourselves, I'm going to give you a bit of a grilling or interview in the style of Microsoft 365. So Adam and Michael, welcome to this session. Thanks for joining us. Can one of you maybe just give us a quick overview of Redstor as an organization?
Sure, I'll take that one. Redstor, we specialize in backup and disaster recovery services, whether that be infrastructure or in the cloud. We've been providing cloud backup services since 2004 and are a vendor in our own right. We've partnered with Risc for 12, 13, maybe even 14 years now in to protect organizations throughout the country and the globe. That's a bit of an overview on Redstor.
Well, while you're talking then, do you want to introduce yourself and your role?
Sure. So I'm Michael Gould. I'm the channel account manager for Risc. Ultimately, it's my job to work in partnership with Risc in order to deliver the best level of service that we can to their customers.
Sounds good. Adam?
Hello all. Yeah, my name's Adam Cronin. I look after pre-sales for Redstor, and with the partnership between Redstor and Risc, I've been involved really from day one, and I've impressive or sad, I've been with Redstor about 18 years. So I've seen the software evolve over the many years, and I've got older.
That's a fair shift, mate. That's very good. Very good to hear. So again, this is probably a question for both of you before we launch into kind of your session proper. Obviously, the last year and a half has been, one of kind of massive change, particularly with flexible remote working, lockdown, however you want to call it. Obviously, thinking back to before lockdown in terms of what Redstor's priorities and focus were, and then obviously winding forward to today, how that's changed. Any thoughts on that?
Ultimately, the way we see the market is it's sped up that move to the cloud. Ultimately, that shift was always going to happen, and we thought it was going to happen over a 4 or 5 year period. So we started to develop things like 365 backup, G Suite backup, and the like in advance of that. But it really accelerated the adoption, and with that adoption also came a really good understanding of why people need to back up and restore in the cloud. So it's moved away from the on-site environments that typically were our focus and the big complicated disaster recovery platforms into cloud applications and services, whether I say like it's 365, G Suite, or Zero accountancy software and the like. That is where the core focus of Redstor's business is moving forward.
Anything else to add, Adam, to that?
I think the main thing is what Michael said. We were already ready with our Microsoft 365 offering before all of the COVID happened, and the sort of people that I was talking to were people in the planning to move and turn off their Exchange infrastructure and move to Microsoft 365. As soon as COVID hit, bang, it just all happened. There was a part of steadying the ship where I think people were getting the remote users back at home and getting them access to email and Teams, and then later on they were thinking, well, hang on a minute, we're now putting all of this data in the cloud and we don't have a copy of that. So we did see a wave, and I'm pleased to say we've been very busy.
And I assume you've seen that the sort of utilization of your platform increase dramatically along with that move to the cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, actually, we've learned a lot as well as we've as well as an organisation started using Office 365 and the Teams and all of the bits and bobs that are bolted on. We've learned from it, and we've also had to evolve our software. So, you know, as an example, version 1 did Mail, OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. And then there's components like you've highlighted, like OneNote, for example, just added that in. We've on our roadmap, we've got extra or better integration with Active Directory within Office 365 to make it easier to configure. So I think the main thing is what you're seeing isn't just a static product.
Sure.
We've got to keep on evolving. We've got to keep on listening and developing and doing bigger and better things.
Yeah, without quoting Microsoft too much, I think Satya Nadella mentioned that they'd seen 2 years worth of digital transformation condensed into about 2 months when the pandemic hit, and I think that we've seen that, and I think you've seen that overall. I've got a few other questions, but I think I'll let you kind of kick into your session now, and if we don't cover them on the way through, I'll pick them up at the end if that's okay.
Perfect.
So, Michael, I think you're going to kick off, aren't you?
Yeah, no problem at all. Let me just load up my presentation. So, complete M365 protection. Now, ultimately, one of the biggest preconceptions with Microsoft 365 is that they are going to be protecting your data. They are a big powerhouse. There's no way that they're going to allow any sort of forms of security threats, whatever it may be. Now, the interesting thing is they are there to provide a platform. They are not there to protect your data. Applications like OneDrive, SharePoint power much of the collaboration capabilities within Office 365. However, that collaboration can be put in jeopardy when user error, hacking, sync issues, or malicious insiders cause data loss. Both apps leverage a primary and secondary recycle bin with a 93-day retention period as standard, but these can also be emptied at any time, making that data irretrievable. Microsoft also have released a OneDrive restore feature, which enables end users to roll back all of their files to a previous point in time within 30 days. But there are major limitations. Most importantly, it adds no new protection. If the data has been deleted, it cannot be restored. For the data that still exists within OneDrive, it's an all or nothing destructive restore, which means the user has to roll back all changes made in their OneDrive account to a selected time period before there was a data breach. Office 365 backup retention policies can also protect you from data loss in very limited scenarios and can take place third-party backup and can't take the place of third-party backup solutions, which can also be seen within the EULA, within their Microsoft EULA, and the quote that's up on the screen. That's their EULA section 6 states, we recommend that you regularly back up your content and data that you store or store using third-party apps and services. Ultimately, this comes off the back of Microsoft being an American company. They are in a suing culture. They are going to protect themselves at all possible risks associated with any form of data loss that someone might try to blame them for. Now, to give a bit of a better understanding in terms of Microsoft's retention policy, they vary across the different areas within Microsoft, and between sort of 30 and 90 days is the default protection time. These can be amended, and Risc can help you with that if that's something that you do wish to do. But the interesting stat there is the average length of time from data compromise to discovery is about 140 days. So every additional layer of protection is going to be helpful and useful within that scenario. One of the other preconceptions ultimately is that organizations, we found that organizations believe that just because they've moved their data into the cloud, it's not their problem and they don't need to look after that data anymore. When really, if that data was important enough for you to protect while it was on site on local machines, just because it's in the cloud doesn't mean that it's not important enough to protect at the same time. Now, these are some stats from a Microsoft McAfee vulnerability report, and it states that 71% of organizations have at least one compromised account each month, and that's a 365 user. Now, the really scary stat there is 45.9% of organizations have at least one privileged user threat each month. And that can be someone that may be a system admin, someone within finance, a CEO. Ultimately, the reason these people are going after these level of people within businesses is they have sway. They have the ability to instruct people to pay invoices and alike. And we have seen this previously. Last year, one of Redstor's customers actually had an email fake invoice that came from the CEO's email address to someone in finance. They paid a £200,000 invoice that was to a random organization that didn't exist, and that was gone. So that's a bit of an understanding of why to back up 365. Just before Adam jumps into the technical piece, these are some of the organizations that we do work with at the moment. Some big names there, some nice names to show, but that's me. I'll finish and pass over to Adam.
Thanks, Michael. So let me just go and share my top screen. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my mouse wiggling on the screen. Yep. Excellent. So look, I've only got 10 minutes. So it's not going to be a long demonstration, but I'm going to just go through some of the key points with Redstor. So I'm going to just log into what we call the Redstor app. So this is our cloud portal. It does support 2FA. I don't have that enabled for demos. And in here, we can obviously back up G Suite, machines, and Xero, and we've got Salesforce landing in here very, very soon. So I'm going to go into my Microsoft 365 area. And then you'll see a little bit of a dashboard appear showing my consumption and whatever I've been up to within my little lab environment here. You can see I'm backing up OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. And if you just click on the Add button, just give you an idea of how simple it is to set this up. So once you've got the login through Risc and you've logged into the Redstor app, you then choose the component that you want to back up. Then when you hit next, it will ask you for your tenant admin user, and it marries the two together, and that's it. The setup is simply done. So let's just look at a couple of restore scenarios. So if you imagine I'm in as the help desk, let's say, for instance, there was a user that we deleted out of Office 365 several months ago. Maybe he's an employee that left. It was a legitimate delete out of Microsoft 365, but now HR have said, look, we've got a case that we've got to provide some information about emails that maybe Adam was sending backwards and forwards. So I can log into here. I can see all of my historical backups that have taken place over the last 4 months, and our retention is 4 months by default, but that can be cranked up if need be. And I can also see how much data that user was protecting. So if I do a selection at this level and I hit the recover button at the bottom right hand corner, you'll see that I can output that user's email to a PST file. So that's incredibly useful if an organization's been deleted out of Microsoft 365, but you still need to get your hands on historical data. So that's going to be quite a long restore. So what I'd rather do is drill into my Adam user. Again, let's pull the 21st. So what I'm showing you here, and again, I'm not going to go into massive detail, but this is an item level restore. So if somebody's phoned up the help desk and said, I had some emails a couple of days ago, can you please put them back in my Outlook? This is the interface that you can pick the user, pick the date, see their infrastructure or their inbox. And in this case, let me go and choose those 4 items, hit recover, and I'm going to recover them back to that user's Outlook. And in this case, I will have to then put in my my tenant user, because I now need to prove that I have the privileges to actually perform this restore. So this is where I do have to then dive for my phone ever so quickly, do the MFA, which is obviously very important, put my thumbprint on there, and that should take me forward. There we go. So what you'll now see is, once we've diverted back into the Redstor app, a cloud restore for my Adam user for those 4 mail items has just started, and you can see a little bar at the top. Now that's going to take about 30 seconds. So while we're waiting for that, let's look at another type of restore, and we can do this for OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams. So in this case, I've got some data in my SharePoint. So if we come down here, we've got Adam's Jeep page. We can see that's 1.2 gig. and how many files are protected within that SharePoint site. Now, if I choose that site, if you just notice below that, you can see that I've got an identical site, but this one has a date and timestamp. And the reason for that is, again, I'm short on time. This is where I performed a restore, and I can show you I can either overwrite the existing Teams, OneDrive, or SharePoint channel, or I can create a new site and append the date and timestamps. That's important if you want to do a comparison of what the SharePoint or Teams looked like yesterday with what it looked like a couple of weeks ago. However, there's another scenario that I'd like to demonstrate with you very quickly, is what happens if Microsoft's having a really bad day. There's no point recovering back to Microsoft 365 if there's news across the world that there's either a massive problem or just maybe a problem with your organization's Office 365. I'm pretty sure it's robust, but problems can happen. So in this case, I'm going to choose to recover using our Redstor instant data. Now, if you haven't seen this before, what this is now going to do is, again, I have to do the authentication ever so quickly. So I'll dive for my phone once more. And we're doing for time. Yep, won't take very long to do this, he says. Come on, unlock phone. It's not recognizing me with my headset on. That's why. Right. Okay. Right. So we're in business. So what's going to happen now is it's going to present that SharePoint site to me. But then I get a choice of either creating a hyperlink that I can email to all my staff that need to access to Teams or SharePoint or OneDrive, or in this case, I'm just going to download the tool on my laptop. So you'll see a little executable appear. And I've got two different techniques of accessing that data: temporary access, or maybe I permanently want to restore it out of Office 365. In my case, I'm going to do temporary access. A little wizard is going to appear. Which screen? There it is. And if I move that over there, and if I just show you I've got a Explorer view of my laptop's hard drive, I'm going to map my SharePoint site as its last backup as a Z drive over here on my Windows laptop. So I'm going to click Mount, and that's it. I've got access to my SharePoint site and all of its content and all of my test data that sits in there. And apart from the authentication piece, that's completely outside of Microsoft 365. So the last little thing I just wanted to show you is, remember I kicked off the mailbox recovery, so I should have a little alarm to say that my restore was complete. So if I then phoned up the user and I said, right, okay, user, log into your Outlook, and what you should see once we log in here is there will be a Redstor folder appear in their Outlook tree. And I think it was the 21st that I've chosen. So you'll see that they're under the Redstor restore folder. Any restores that you've performed for that user, there'll be a date and timestamp. And of course, then I can plus into my inbox and see the items that I've just restored on that user's behalf in their inbox. So obviously tight on time, and I wanted to leave it there for some questions and answers. But hopefully that gave you a good little quick overview of some of the capabilities with Redstor. So I'll hand back to Mark, I think. Mark, you there?
Yeah, sorry, probably help if I could find the unmute button. I'm keeping myself quiet. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks for that, Adam. I know again, we're kind of tight on time, so that was a real sort of quick rattle through the capabilities there. I've just got a couple of slides just to sort of summarize that discussion. But I mean, just before I kind of launch into my bit, just in terms of a couple of other questions, talked about obviously sort of the Redstor software and how it evolves, and it's evolving all the time. What are you looking at for the future? What's kind of on the priority list for the rest of this year, maybe?
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to pick that up. So one of the new things we're doing within Office 365 is our Active Directory integration. Just checking I'm not muted. And that's really just to help us scale. Some of the organizations that we talk to have tens of thousands of users. So we're building in some additional functionality to help make that a lot more easier. Also, anti-malware, actually, to pick up on some of the points that you raised earlier. We've already do this in our infrastructure, like your Windows and Linux machines. We can actually detect whether you've got nasty things in your backup. It's an additional option within our service. But like you say, Microsoft have this great big threat database. And when you try to restore data, if Microsoft says, hang on a minute, you don't want that, it will alert. I don't know if I'm not going to go back to my screen, but you might have seen a few little alarm bells in there to say that you've backed up, but there might have been something in your backup. I've actually put those EICAR viruses in all of my mailboxes, because soon we're going to have an interface again within our service to say, right, well, okay, you might want to restore this guy's mailbox, but you definitely don't want to recover these 2 files and why, and then give you a bit more background around the score of why we think that file might be malware and reasons why we're blocking it, and maybe the ability to override that. I don't know, but that's some of the future developments that we're doing.
Yeah, brilliant. So goes without saying, and we probably didn't say it specifically, obviously the Redstor platform itself is backing up your Office 365 data to a completely separate platform. It's not stored in Azure, it's stored on Redstor's own platform. And that's, you know, one of the reasons why when we're talking to our customers, that's the recommendation, is that, you know, as well as all the other stuff I talked about, MFA and conditional access and secure score, is back it up with Redstor.
Just to add to that, Mark, it is 2 separate data center locations as well. We actively replicate that data, so we always retain 2 copies of that at any moment in time. One of the great things about the solution as well is, if God forbid Microsoft are ever down, their houses are on fire, whatever it may be, we can independently access that data without the need to access the Microsoft cloud as well. So we can keep organizations back up and running regardless of Microsoft being up and running.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll just move on to my sort of wrap-up slides, and then obviously we can come back to any questions at the end, if that's okay, guys. So brilliant. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Adam.
Cheers, Mark.
Pull that sort of slide back up again. Move you out the way there. Yeah. So just to sort of wrap that, I mean, I've focused on Teams here. Yeah, because Teams is obviously the product that sits in Office 365 that people are most focused on with you know, remote working, flexible working. So this is actually an extract from one of the documents, the white papers we did alongside Redstor. So really just emphasising some of the points that both Michael and Adam made in terms of, you know, why backup Teams, why backup Office 365. Surely it's backed up, isn't it? Well, no, it's not. It's, as Michael said, you know, Microsoft's focus is on keeping the platform running, and you may have multiple copies of a document in different data centers, but that document could be corrupt for whatever reason. And there we go. There's a few points there. You know, employees leaving accidentally, malicious insiders. There's a whole area of Microsoft security around insider risk management, which I haven't got time to touch on, but again, that's a big area of focus for Office 365. How do you prevent people within your organization from doing things that you don't want them to do? Ransomware attacks is obviously a big one. So if it all goes wrong, how do you get it back? And obviously the Redstor is our solution. Completely separate platform. So just without battering KPMG, because they probably had enough of a battering over this one as well. So this is probably about 12 months ago now, actually. They thinking about retention policies within 365, and they're great as long as you know what you're doing and you're confident in that you know exactly what you're doing. Somebody in KPMG decided to change some of the Teams retention policies and ended up setting that to 0 days, which basically wiped out the chat conversations for 145,000 users. So that's an example of what can go wrong if you click the wrong box or set the wrong policy. Obviously, if your environment's backed up to a third-party platform like Redstor, then you can recover that. So that's a fairly recent example, and probably the most high-profile one. Sorry, KPMG. So what are the next practical steps for you guys within your organisations? So goes without saying, talk to us if you want help with this. But certainly, you know, the quick wins, for want of a better word, are MFA. If you're not already switched it on, then switch it on, find a way of switching it on, get your users to adopt it, fight the resistance. Advanced threat protection, which is now Microsoft Defender for Office 365, but we'll call it ATP because it's shorter for now. As I mentioned, that is actually part of Microsoft 365 Business Premium now. They've bolted a lot of products within that suite, but you can just add it on per user, and I think it's still £1.50 per user per month, which is money well spent from that point of view. And as you saw from my one click, fairly easy to switch on, although again we'd recommend talk to us, make sure you're adopting best practice there. Retention policies, again, if you're 100% confident, that's fine, but do you know what you've got set and for what documents? Conditional access, again, you can flag high profile users, flag risky locations, and flag devices and apps that need a higher level of authentication. Let's say if you're going into the HR system, you might want to make that a higher priority than email, for example. Secure score, again, very, very easy, assuming that you've got admin access to your Office 365 tenant. Take a look at it, see what's in there to be what's recommended to be switched on within there. And then again, goes without saying, just to back up what Adam and Michael were saying, back up Office 365 and make sure if it all goes wrong, whether that's a malware attack or a corrupt document or a malicious insider, you can recover that data back, either to back into Office 365 with a clean version, or somewhere else if needed. So just to sort of wrap this session up then, so I guess why are we here and why are we alongside Redstor? And I think, as Adam said, we've been working together for probably over 14 years now as two complementary organisations. I'll round it up to 20 years, but where Risc come in is that we have the expertise on both sides of the fence, if that makes sense. So both in terms of the Microsoft 365 environment and configuring that and managing that and supporting that for you, but also that expertise going back best part of 14 years with Redstor. We've been one of the key partners in the UK for that. We have lots of customers, lots of reference customers you can talk to if you want to see what other people are doing and how they benefited from that. And if it's something that you're interested in doing, then the free 30-day proof of concept, that's particularly around the Redstor cloud-to-cloud backup, so we can set that up, configure it, and let you take a look at it and have a play with it for up to 30 days for free of charge as part of this. And there is a link there, but Sean will follow up with all of you with recording from today, a copy of some of the key material, and also details of how to sign up for the offer, and also how to book time with us directly. If you want a follow-on session to go into some of this in a bit more detail, then there'll be information there on how to sign up. In terms of what else we do as Risc in terms of other events, then obviously a lot of the focus in the last 12 months certainly has been around Teams. So you'll see Teams mentioned at least 3 of those there. So as well as this securing Microsoft 365 session, we've been doing a lot of end user awareness training. So flexible working with Teams was the original. How do we get started with Teams? Suddenly I'm sent home with a laptop using Teams. How do I navigate my way around it? And then more recently, the sort of feature deep dive and feature update session we've been running for everybody really, so end users and IT admins and business owners. And then the unifying comms session, actually we're running another one on Friday alongside WaveNet. So that's really how do I bring my telephony into Teams and give my users a single place to go to communicate. So again, that's been running all the way through lockdown as well. So have a look at our website, the main website here. So any new events will be on there if you're interested in learning some new stuff. As I say, the Unifying Comms one, the next one is on Friday if you're interested in signing that. Sean will include the details of that within the follow-up email. Okay, so sort of 10 minutes over time. So apologies for that, and Adam, apologies for you having to cut your session a little bit short with me
no problem
talking. So I'll just stop sharing those slides now. So I have been sort of monitoring the chat. I don't think there's any particular questions that have come through the chat, guys? Sean, Kirsty, has anything come on that I've missed?
No, not really, no.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I think, as I said, using my favourite 80-20 rule, obviously what we've tried to do is condense a lot of information into a relatively short period of time. There's no way we can cover the depth and breadth of both the Office 365 cloud to cloud backup with Redstor and obviously the Microsoft 365 security options and security assessment. But hopefully it's given you a little bit of a flavour of some of the things that you can maybe implement fairly easily yourselves, or with a partner like Risc that can help you to do that. As I say, you don't have to, if you're already using Office 365, a lot of this is already included. Just need to be aware of it, need to be able to know how to switch it on. And then some of the more granular, cleverer stuff like conditional access, needs an increased license or an add-on license. But generally, so you can do a hell of a lot, particularly MFA. I'll just mention one word again. It'll be MFA and as you see with banks and supermarkets, that they're all using that sort of two-factor authentication now with a text to approve, or an app. I notice Amazon themselves now send you a link to approve if you're using a new device. So that's kind of normalizing it for people now. So hopefully the trauma of having to use another device to log in at the same time when you're working from home is not massive. So as I say, by all means, come back to us if you want to go into anything in a bit more detail. Then there'll be a link to book time directly with me in my calendar. If there's no more questions, then I think we'll sort of wrap it up there then, guys, and appreciate your time and attention, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.